Well, hello there. Pull up a chair. The name's Bill, or Grandpa to most folks around here. You're here for a story, I reckon. Not a war story about heroes and medals, mind you. No, sir, this one's different. This one's about a quiet night, a radio, and a voice that knew too much. So, if you're settled in, I'll tell you about the time the war reached out and whispered my name through the static. You want to know about fear? Real fear? It ain't the bullets. At least with bullets, you know what's what. They come at you, you hit the dirt, you shoot back. It's a transaction. No, the real fear? That's in the quiet, in the waiting, in the things you hear in the dark that shouldn't be there. It was November 2004. Fallujah, the second push. The city was a black mouth that had already swallowed too many good men. Me and my buddy Chaz, we were stuck on this God-forsaken listening post they called Omega, just a sandbagged hole in the wall on the eastern edge of the city. Our whole world was a 10-foot circle of stink, cold rations, and that damn generator that sounded like a dying animal. Our job was simple: sit in the dark, listen to the radio traffic, and report anything that moved. Mostly, it was just static, garbled Arabic from insurgent walkies, and the occasional crackle from our own command. Hours would bleed into each other. You'd start seeing shapes in the shadows of broken windows across the street. Your mind would play tricks. Is that a man? Is that a rifle barrel? The cold would seep into your bones, a different kind of cold, dry and full of dust. One night, it was so quiet you could hear your own heartbeat thumping in your ears. Just to stay awake, to feel like we were doing something, Chaz started scanning the frequencies on the secondary set. It was all the usual noise: hiss, pop, fragments of angry prayer, coded chatter. Then he stopped, froze. He pushed the headset at me, his eyes wide in the dim green glow of the equipment lights. "Listen to this," he whispered, like someone in the room with us might hear. I put the cans on, and there it was, cutting through the static like a hot knife through butter. A voice, a man's voice, speaking perfect flat American English, no accent, no emotion. It sounded like a news anchor reading the obituaries. "Bravo Company 2nd Platoon," the voice stated, calm as you please. "James R. Collins, date of birth, March 11th, 1982, Boston, Massachusetts. Social Security number 042-86-9153. Mother's maiden name, O'Connell." A cold worse than the desert night shot down my spine. Jimmy Collins, he was our machine gunner, a loudmouth from Southie. We'd just seen him at chow that afternoon. Chaz and I stared at each other. This wasn't enemy chatter. This wasn't a broadcast. This was someone reading from a personnel file. My first stupid thought was, damn, there's a leak back at battalion. Some clerk sold a hard drive. The voice continued, methodically listing another private, then a corporal, home addresses, names of girlfriends back home, details, private, civilian details. "Turn it off," I hissed at Chaz. He fumbled with the dial, but his fingers were numb. For a few more seconds, that calm, terrible recitation filled our little bubble of darkness. "Currently stationed at Forward Operating Base Steel. Blood type, O negative, last dental exam, October 2003. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. Swallowed back into the hiss and pop of empty frequency. Chaz killed the speaker. The only sound was the generator and our own ragged breathing, fogging in the cold air. We didn't say a word. We just sat there, in that sandbagged hole, staring out at the blacked-out windows of Fallujah, knowing one thing for certain now. Someone out there in that darkness wasn't just watching us. They were reading our mail. The next few nights, they changed everything. "Chaz," he cracked, not in a loud way, in a quiet, final way. He refused to touch the secondary set, called it a sick joke and someone's idea of Psy-Ops that got out of hand. He'd just stare into the darkness, flinching at every shadow, his knuckles white on his rifle. He wasn't my partner anymore. He was just a scared kid in the same hole. So when my solo watch came, the silence felt heavier, more personal, and the voice came back, like clockwork, every night on the same damned frequency. It wasn't just reading files anymore, it was reporting. Sergeant Erickson, today at 11:47 hours, entered the dwelling at Almira Street, Sector 7, recovered a weapons cache from beneath the kitchen floor, also discovered a family photo album, placed a photograph of a young boy, approximately 6 years old, in the left breast pocket of his uniform. The photograph remains there as of 2200 hours. My blood went cold. It was too specific, too real. Erickson was a hard-nosed, by-the-book lifer from Minnesota. The next morning, back at the FOB, I found him cleaning his gear. I didn't know how to ask. I just mumbled, "Hey, Sarge, heard you had some luck on Almira Street yesterday?" He grunted, not looking up. "Yep." "Find anything personal? Besides the guns?" He stopped. His hands went still. He slowly looked up at me, and his face, usually ruddy, was pale. "Why?" "Just heard a rumor about a photo." He didn't speak for a long time. Then he reached into his pocket very slowly and pulled out a creased color photograph. A little Arab boy with a huge smile standing in front of a sun-bleached wall. Erickson's voice was a dry rasp. "My boy, back home. He's about that age. I don't know why I took it." He looked ashamed, terrified. "How the hell do you know about that?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just walked away, feeling the voice's presence like a physical weight on my neck. It wasn't just in the radio. It was in our heads, in our pockets. It was watching us in broad daylight. But the worst was yet to come. It was my turn on Omega again, deep into the lonely hours. The static hissed, and then the calm, familiar tone filled my ears. But this time, it wasn't talking about someone else. "Soldier on post Omega," it said, and my heart just stopped dead in my chest. It was talking to me. "You are currently looking at the red-shuttered window on the second floor, approximately 200 meters northeast of your position. Do not be alarmed. There is no one there at this time." My eyes snapped up. I hadn't even realized I'd been staring at that exact window, a dark square with a single, broken red shutter hanging by a hinge. A wave of pure animal panic washed over me. It wasn't just watching our unit. It was watching me. Right now. It knew where my eyes were pointed in the pitch black. I fumbled for the handset to our command net, my fingers slick with cold sweat. I keyed the mic, my voice breaking. Command, this is Omega. Radio check over." "Omega Command, we read you. Sit rep," came the bored reply. I couldn't form the words about the voice. They sounded insane. All quiet, no movement. A lie. "Command, has there been any, aerial surveillance on my sector tonight? Drones? Anything?" "Negative, Omega. You're on your own. Maintain watch." The voice in my headset came back, soft, almost conversational. "They cannot help you. We are closer." That did it. I ripped the headset off like it was on fire and scrambled to the primary radio. This wasn't just data. This was a direct threat. I called the company's CO, Captain Miller. My report a jumbled mess about a hostile broadcast, surveillance, a direct personal identifier. All I got back was a long sigh of static. Then, copy Omega, log it, we'll look into it. Now maintain radio discipline. Miller out. The click was the loneliest sound I'd ever heard. I was alone, truly alone, with a voice that knew my secrets, my unit secrets, and now exactly where I was looking. The darkness outside the post wasn't empty anymore. It was full of a single, unblinking eye. The next day, they pulled me off the post, told me to report to the company HQ tent. Captain Miller looked tired, pissed off, like I brought him a problem he didn't need. Sitting next to him was a man I'd never seen before. Captain's bars, but a different kind of uniform. Pressed, clean, with a patch I barely recognized. Psychological operations. He had the calm, bored face of a man who'd heard every crazy story in the book. "Private," Miller started, rubbing his temples. "This broadcast. You're sure you and Chaz didn't just pick up some weird satellite radio? BBC World Service doing a profile on the unit?" "No, sir," I said, my voice flat. "It was on a tactical UHF band, and it knew things it shouldn't, about Sergeant Erickson." I glanced at the Psy-Ops officer. His expression didn't change. "You made a recording?" the Psy-Ops captain asked. "Not did you? Just, you made a recording?" Like he already knew the answer. I hesitated, then nodded. I'd started taping my watch shifts on a little digital recorder after the first night. A stupid attempt to prove I wasn't crazy. I handed it over. He plugged in a pair of sleek headphones, closed his eyes, and listened. For 5 minutes, the only sound in the tent was the faint digital leak from his headphones and the distant thump of a mortar landing somewhere outside the wire. He took the headphones off, placed them neatly on the table, and looked at me with the pitying smile a teacher gives a slow student. "It's good work," he said almost admiringly. "Very sophisticated, low-frequency, high-clarity broadcast. Probably from a mobile unit within a 2-mile radius. The content," he shrugged, "standard Psy-War template. Induce paranoia, erode unit cohesion. Make you doubt your security, your command, your own sanity." Captain Miller leaned forward. "So it's the Hajis?" "Of course," the Psy-Ops officer said smoothly. "They've had years to prep this city. They've bought or hacked personnel files. It's not hard. Our data security back in 2003 was a joke. They've got scouts with binoculars and cheap walkie-talkies watching every move. Erickson takes a photo. Some kid on a roof sees him do it. Radios a description to a guy with a transmitter. You look at a window, another spotter sees you, feeds the info. It's a feedback loop. They're using your own eyes against you." It sounded so logical, so clean. It wrapped up the horror in a neat box labeled "Enemy Tactic." I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to. "The solution, Private," the officer continued, his voice taking on a lecturing tone, "is discipline. Information discipline and mental discipline. You ignore it. You treat it as noise. The moment you react, the moment you change your behavior based on what you hear, they win. They own you. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," I muttered, the words tasting like ash. Captain Miller stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. "You heard the man. Don't let them get in your head. You're a soldier? Do your damn job. No more panic over the radio. Dismissed." I saluted, turned, and walked out into the blinding white sun. The official verdict was in. I was spooked by clever insurgents. End of story. I felt a weird mix of relief and humiliation. As I trudged back toward my hooch, a voice stopped me. Hey, hold up. It was Lieutenant Hayes, our platoon leader. A decent guy, young, but he actually gave a damn about us. He fell into step beside me, not looking at me, lighting a cigarette. "That Psy-Ops guy," Hayes said after a long drag. "He's right. Probably. Standard procedure." "Probably, sir," I echoed. Hayes stopped walking. He looked around, then lowered his voice. "But just be careful, okay? I've heard intercepts before. Jihadist radio, propaganda, all of it. This, what you caught, the tone, the precision." He shook his head, his eyes distant. "This feels different. It's cleaner, meaner. I don't like it. Keep your head down." He clapped me on the shoulder and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the dust. The official story was a life raft, but Lieutenant Hayes had just quietly punched a hole in it. The water of doubt was seeping back in, colder and deeper than before. It wasn't just the Hajis. It was something different. Something even the rule book couldn't explain. 2 nights later, the storm hit. A real haboob. The world outside Post Omega vanished into a swirling orange-black nightmare. You couldn't see a hand in front of your face. The radio was our only tether to reality, and even that was fraying, crackling with static from the sand choking the air. I was alone, absolutely alone. The official explanation from Psy-Ops felt like a child's fairy tale here in this biblical fury. The primary net was dead quiet. Command had hunkered down. So, against every order, driven by a dread I can't explain, I put on the secondary headset. I had to know. The storm screamed, and then, cutting through it like a scalpel, was the voice. Clear as a bell, untouched by the chaos. It wasn't reporting anymore. It was asking questions. "Private Michael Reno," it said, conversational, almost friendly. "How is your sister Jenny? Did her knee surgery go well? The anterior cruciate ligament reconstruction, was it a success?" My blood froze. Mike Reno was in the next fighting hole over, maybe 50 yards away in the soup. A second later, Reno's voice, tight with panic, burst onto the company frequency he must have keyed by mistake. "Who said that? Who the fuck is on this net? How do you know about Jenny?" Chaos. Other voices, scared, angry, overlapping. "Reno, shut up!" "What's going on?" "Command, we have unauthorized traffic." The flat voice continued, unperturbed now on both frequencies, a ghost in the machine. "We know many things, Private Reno. We know she is recovering at 441 Maple Lane, Dayton, Ohio. We know she is afraid." The company net erupted into a babble of fear and confusion. The storm wasn't just outside anymore. It was in our radios, in our heads. The Psy-Ops lie about spotters on roofs evaporated. No spotter could know about a private sister's surgery back in Ohio. And then it stopped. A deliberate, heavy pause in the static. When it spoke again, the tone shifted. It wasn't addressing the unit. It was making a selection. "Private Lucas Garcia," the voice said. "My best friend, Luke." My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack. The voice was different now, softer, almost intimate. It was the most terrifying sound I'd ever heard. "Your turn, Private Garcia." A beat of silence, filled only by the howling wind. "We are already in your house, in Cleveland, 241 East 65th Street. The paint on the porch steps is still peeling. The blue Toyota Corolla in the driveway has a flat tire on the rear left." I couldn't breathe. I knew that house. I'd seen pictures. The flat tire. Luke had joked about it in an email a week ago. The voice continued, a gentle, monstrous whisper in the storm. Tell your mother not to scream. She will not hear us coming. Dead silence on every frequency. The storm, the war, the world, it all just stopped. Then a sound that will haunt me to my grave, not from the radio, from the darkness, 50 yards to my left, from Luke's position. A raw animal cry of pure terror, a scream torn from the gut, followed by the crash of equipment, the frantic scramble in the sand, the sound of a man running blind through a sandstorm to find a satellite phone, to call home, to hear his mother's voice. I just sat there in my hole, paralyzed. The voice was gone. The storm raged on. But the line had been crossed. The war was no longer here, in Fallujah. It was in a little house on East 65th Street in Cleveland, and we were powerless to stop it. The morning after the storm was the color of dried blood. The sand had settled, covering everything in a fine ochre film. The news came down the chain, cold and official. At approximately 0400 local time, corresponding to the height of the storm in Fallujah, a burglary attempt was reported at 241 East 65th Street, Cleveland, Ohio. Suspects fled upon triggering the alarm system. No property taken, no injuries sustained. The resident, Mrs. Maria Garcia, was shaken but unharmed. A coincidence? A perfectly timed, orchestrated event to sell the lie. The Psy-Ops officer, when pressed, just nodded with grim satisfaction. See? Psychological reinforcement. A real-world event to validate the broadcast. Crude, but effective. They probably paid some local junkies $50 to rattle a doorknob. Case closed. For the Army, it was a neat bow on a resolved incident. But for us, for Luke, for me, there was no resolution, only a deeper, colder fracture. Luke was a ghost of himself. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. They pulled him off the line, said it was combat stress. We all knew it was the voice. And then quietly, without fanfare, our entire company got orders to redeploy. Not just a sector shift, a full move to the other side of the city. New FOB, new patrol area. The official line was tactical realignment. But the scuttlebutt, the look in Lieutenant Hayes's eyes when he gave the briefing, it was a scrub. They were pulling us out of the frequency's reach, erasing us from its playlist. On my last watch on Post Omega, the air was still and dead. The equipment was being packed. I was alone with the husk of the radio. I knew I shouldn't, but I had to, one last time. I powered on the secondary set, the speaker low against my ear. I scanned through the bands. Static, white noise, empty Arabic chatter from a distant market. The war had moved on, or we had moved away from it. The voice was gone. A part of me felt a sickening relief. Another part felt a deeper dread. Had it found new listeners? I was about to switch it off, to let the ghost rest, when I heard it. Not on the speaker. Fainter. A whisper at the very edge of perception, almost buried in the hiss. Maybe it was my mind. Maybe it wasn't. Goodbye. For now. It wasn't broadcast. It was a personal send-off. A cold fingertip drawn down my spine. I yanked the jack out and sat there, my breath coming in short gasps in the silent post. Luke and I were still friends. We don't talk about it much. What is there to say? He never really came all the way back from that night. None of us did. Was it hackers with a cruel sense of theater? A genius insurgent Psy-Op cell with sources we can't imagine? Some black program on our own side that went horribly wrong? I've turned it over in my head for 20 years. I've read the books, the reports. Nothing fits. Not perfectly. So you learn to live with the whole, the unanswered question. People think war is about the bang, the flash, The stuff you see, but it ain't. The stuff that sticks with you, the rot that gets in your bones. It's the quiet things, the things you hear in the dark. It's a flat, calm voice in a headset telling you secrets it has no right to know. And the terrible truth it reveals isn't about the enemy. It's about you. It's that you can be found, known, and touched from anywhere. That home isn't a sanctuary. That the front line isn't a place on a map. It's a frequency. And once you've been on it, you're never really off. You're always in some small, silent part of your soul, back on that post, in the dark, listening, waiting for the static to clear, and for the voice to tell you what it knows next.